In this video, we're going to continue looking at data transformations. So you'll notice here I've got the module 7.2 script open, and like I talked about in the last video, I've cleared out my environment here so I can start from scratch. So the first part of the notes is the exact same as the 7.1 notes. So just to kind of highlight the important pieces here, make sure that you have called forward the TidyVerse, because remember the TidyVerse is going to contain dplyr, and we've been working with dplyr, and in particular the 5 different functions. We also need to call forward our data set, which is located in the ISLR library. So we're working with that car seat data set, and here it is. Alright, so this week and next we're going to work with 5 different functions in dplyr. Last time we looked at filter. This time we're going to look at arrange, select, and mutate. So the first one we're going to look at is arrange. So what arrange does is it takes a data frame and a set of column names and it orders it by those column names. So remember that for each of these functions they have the same basic structure. We have the name of the function. The first argument is always going to be the data set. The last arguments are always what you want to do or what you want to work with. And then finally what's going to be produced is a brand new data set. So let's run this line of code here. This line of code says we're going to arrange the car seats data by price. And so anytime you use these functions, a new data set is produced. And notice here the output is in the console. We talked about this last time. Having the output in the console isn't particularly helpful. So really what we want to do is we want to assign that to be a new data set. So notice here I have an object named car seat underscore price LH. The LH is going to stand for low to high, and I'm going to set that equal to that line of code that we had above. So running this, notice I have a new data set that appears here, and then we can view that data set. So if we look at the price variable, notice that price has been arranged from low to high. Now if you'll recall, when we view data this way, we can toggle on these to sort the data, but that doesn't change the data set. Remember that by using the arrange, we're actually changing the order of the data set. Now we could also order price from high to low. So notice here I have an object named car seat underscore price underscore HL for high low. I'm still setting it equal to arrange, but this time around the variable price, I've used the DESC function, which stands for descend. So we can run this. And notice that price is now ordered from highest to lowest. Arrange can also order by more than one variable. So what it does is, and I've got a little note up here, if you provide more than one column name, each additional column will be used to break ties in the value of the preceding columns. So here in my arrange statement, I have the car seats data set. And then I have the variable US. Remember that US takes the values no and yes to denote whether or not the car seat was made in the United States. So R is going to code the no's as a 0 and the yeses as a 1. So for this reason, the data is going to be ordered so that all the no's are first and then the yeses. After this, I have the descend function around price. So what this is going to do is for each type, so in other words for all of the no's, it's going to order price in descending order, and then for all of the yeses, it's going to order price in descending order. So let's run this and view our new data set. So notice first here, looking at the US variable, we do have all of the no's, and then we have all of the yeses. And then also, if we start up here at the no's, notice that price has been ordered from high to low, and if we go down to the yeses, we will also see that price has been ordered from high to low. Just kind of a note here, missing values are always going to be placed at the end. The next function we're going to look at is the select function. So the select function is going to zoom in on a subset based on names of a variable. So the filter function filtered it based on values of a variable. Select is going to base it on names of a variable. So here for our car seat data set, we only have 11 variables, so this isn't that useful. But you can imagine if you had a really large data set that had hundreds of variables, you may just want to make a smaller data set that had 5 to 10 of those variables. So just as an example, if we run the select function and we give it the data set car seats and then the arguments that follow are urban and US, this will create a new data set that just has the variables urban and US. So running this, notice that I got an error in select. So let's talk about what is going on here. If you'll remember earlier in the course, we talked about what can happen with using packages, that you might get a function that is masked. That is what is happening on my end. So if you run this, it may run on yours. The problem is, if you'll remember, we used that VCD extra package before. And so the VCD extra package also installs what is called the mask function. And the mask function is actually what is doing the masking here. So there are a couple different ways to fix this. Here in the comments is the first option. So you can call a function by its full name. So the full name of a function, how that looks is we have the name of the package. So remember, select comes from dplyr, 2 colons, and then the name of the function. And you could always call functions this way. We just typically don't because we don't have to. So note, if I run it, it will do exactly what I expected it to do, which was to create a data set with just those 2 variables, urban and US. The other way that we've seen before is to use detach. So what I could do is I could detach the VCD extra package. So if I run this and then run my original select, you'll notice that I still have the problem here. And the reason is even though we installed the VCD extra, it was the mask package that actually had the problem. So let's run this. And so we have even a further problem, because notice what happened when we downloaded the VCD extra is there were several packages that were downloaded with that. So we actually have to unattach all of them. And I think actually I didn't have to do that last step. I think it was already done. So let's run our plain select now and notice it works. So again, this is just a comment on the masking, and this will depend on your computer and what packages you have installed and which ones you've called the library with. So that is just something to keep in mind, that this is something that could happen. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and comment these both out again. But I do want to show you, if I call forward that mask package again, so here I'm calling library again. Notice when we call this, it will give me a warning that says the select function is going to be masked from dplyr. So before, we kind of ignored these warnings when we were calling these packages because it wasn't going to be a problem. But now that we've used some, multiple packages, and especially if you haven't cleared out your environment, you might have that issue arise. So just be aware there are 2 solutions. Again, you could just call the select and put the dplyr double colon in front of it so it knows to use the select from dplyr, or you could use the detach, and you'll have to be careful because sometimes more than one package is brought forward at once. But you saw there it gave me those warnings so I could kind of piecewise go through and get rid of the packages that I needed to. Alright, so now we saw what select looks like, so let's assign it to a new data set called car seats location. We run this and we can view it. And again, we see that we have our data set here. Oops. Oh, sorry about that. I was hitting the side of my mic. And so here, again, we have the data set with just those 2 variables. Also, with the select function, there's another function called rename, which can be really useful. Rename just renames a variable. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to assign a new data set called car seats 2. And I want to, instead of having the variable shelfloc, I want to have it called qual SL. And the reason for that is, if we look at what this variable represents, it's a variable that indicates the quality of the shelving. So maybe I'd rather have it qual and then SL for shelf location. So we can run this. So notice here, if I look at my car seats 2 data set, so this time I'm going to click on it here. I could have used the view as well. Notice that that variable has been renamed to qual_SL. We can also rearrange variables using the select. So to do this, we're going to use this new function. It's called the everything function. Notice it has no arguments in it. So I'm going to set car seat 3 equal to, and then I've got select. Just like I did before, I have the name of the data set. I have urban, I have US, so what it's going to do is it's going to place urban as the first variable, US as the second variable, and then the everything, what that does is it says, okay, grab all of the other variables and place them at the end. So if we run this, we look at car seat 3, notice that urban and US are now at the beginning of my data set. The last function we're going to look at from dplyr is the mutate, and mutate will add variables to a data set. And it's always going to add the columns at the end. So for example, if we look at the income variable in my data set, notice it's in thousands of dollars. Let's say for whatever reason I wanted to actually convert it over to the full number. Notice I've used the mutate function. First argument is always the name of the data set. And then I'm going to create a new variable called income_1000, and I'm going to set it equal to the variable income times 1000. So running this, and again, we can click here to look at car seats 4 or use the view function. Notice down here at the end, we have our new variable income 1000, and it is equal to income times 1000. And then we can use the transmute function similar to the mutate, but what transmute does is it will only keep our new variable. So notice here I've got car seats underscore income, and I'm setting that equal to transmute, name of the data set, and I still have that income 1000 equal to income times 1000. And then finally, if I click on my car seats income, my new data set, notice by using transmute, my new data set only contains this variable. And then I do recommend reading this chapter in your book. There are several useful creation functions listed in there as well. And that is going to be the end of this video.